So our last episode, we did an updated tier list for the main ARs in the CDL, and this time we're gonna be doing the flexes. But I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I went to the COD Reddit and I asked them, and I got their rankings, or their tier list, I should say, so I could compare it to how I have mine. And I'll be honest, it's kind of close. But you guys let me know in the comment section below which tier list you think is better. And if it's not mine, keep it to yourself. Thank you. So like I said, I went to the COD Reddit and I added up all the rankings, right? So everyone that participated in it, I appreciate you. And basically, whoever had the most votes in each tier is where I placed that player, right? For the COD Reddit. That's that. And the other thing is, I know people are going to say, they're going to say Cellium's not a flex, he's the main AR. It's been made known. Vanguard, first off, isn't really the best game when it comes to flex and main ARs. And also, a lot of these teams switch up. I am going to have Cellium and Priesta both in the flex role. So starting off in the D tier, me and the COD Reddit, we had one player in common. And I hate to do this as my guy, but the first player in my tier list in the D tier is going to be Priesta. And that's also what the COD Reddit voted for. Priesta was the only player from the COD Reddit that they had in the D tier, and he just hasn't been nearly as good as a lot of these guys. He ranks in damn near the bottom for almost every single statistical category compared to all the other flex players. So it sucks to say, but Priesta is in my D tier. And then the other player in the D tier for me, and this player was tied in the COD Reddit. He had the same amount of C tier votes as the D tier, but I decided to bump him up because there were more upvotes on all the C tier ones. It doesn't matter. Anyways, it is going to be TJ Haley. Look, TJ's my guy. He has not performed well. Even when Boston was actually having some success, he just hasn't really performed, in my opinion. I mean, the whole Boston team is very hit or miss, very inconsistent. But Tej is not the Tej that we've seen years ago. Hopefully he can bring it back. I can't put him any higher because I really haven't even seen him like string a couple series together, you know, a couple good series like a lot of these other players. He's just been very mediocre. D tier might be a little too harsh, you know, so the COD Reddit might have me with this one, but I have him in the D tier as well. And then moving on to the C tier, I only had 2 flexes in this tier, while the COD Reddit had 4. So they thought a lot of the flex players in the league were, you know, below average. The first player that is going to be in my C tier is Draza, and the COD Reddit did have Draza in the C tier as well. Draza's had his moments, for sure. Draza's also definitely been a lot better when it comes to the actual majors. But for me, I can't put him any higher than the C tier because of the inconsistencies in his game. Like Draza has takeover games, he's had takeover series. You know, he's been crucial to LAT's success, even if it's only a little bit of success. And he is a very versatile player. But for me, it's still just some of those plays, some of those mistakes that he makes, they can be rather costly. And then my other C tier flex, and this one was surprising to me. He hasn't played in a while. Well, he did just recently come back, but it is going to be LAG's Gunless. Gunless, I feel like in the beginning of Vanguard, he was very good. I was very high on Gunless. I rated him very highly. But I feel like ever since he's came back, he's just kind of lost the step. And maybe that's because he hasn't got the same amount of reps as all these other players. Maybe that's because LAG had success, whether it was a fluke or not, when he was out and they came back and they were kind of behind. But Gunless is just, he hasn't been performing like the Gunless we know. I mean, this guy has, like, you know, some of the most major MVPs of all time. Like, we're talking of all time. And he's just not playing at that level. But he just doesn't seem as comfortable as he should be. And the COD Reddit also agreed. They had Gunless in the C tier as well. But the COD Reddit also had 2 more players. They had TJ Haley and London's Gizmo. Gizmo obviously took a step back. He stepped down. He was playing in Challengers for a little bit. He is back now. They had both of them joining Draza and Gunless in the C tier. And for me, you know, Gizmo, he's kind of in Gunless's same situation where he doesn't have as many reps at the pro level. because he did step down. But I don't know. I feel like the C tier was a little low for Gizmo. And TJ, you could have put TJ in the C tier. I wouldn't argue that. And then moving on to the B tier. I have 3 players in my B tier. And the COD Reddit also had 3 flex players in their B tier, but they're not the same players. So to start it off, I actually had London's Gizmo. And the thing is, Gizmo was playing very solid. And so I just felt like C was way too low for him. Because even when you talk about statistics, Gizmo, he ranks, in the top half for, I would say, majority of the categories. There's obviously some where he falls off, and there's some where he's, first or like top 4 out of all the flexes. So I don't know. I think we have to see where he's at from now until the end of the year because he is back. But I think B tier for me is where he needs to be. And then this is going to be a take that gets me, maybe not. Actually, I think this is a very fair take. I thought the COD Reddit was drunk for this, but joining Gizmo in my list is going to be Optics Illy. Now, Illy has also been out. Gunless Illy and Gizmo all have been out for a, prolonged amount of time. Illy obviously has a hand injury. I think he's coming back. I believe he will be playing in the qualifiers and he'll be back. But Illy is a unique player. I think he's got great comps. Okay, I thought he was Optics IGL, at least from the listen-ins and just the way when I would watch the behind the scenes of the Optic videos, it seemed like he was the IGL. And he was kind of the guy who made sure that everything was going according to plan. But statistically, he hasn't been good. And it's not even like hasn't been like good compared to some of the best flexes in the game. He's basically at the bottom of every statistical category. So it's not good. And he was crucial to their first major win this year because he had the series of his life in the finals versus Atlanta FaZe. But I don't think he's an A or S tier flex player. And then lastly, in my B tier, I have Cammy. And the COD Reddit also had Cammy in their B tier. Cammy's a player who is so influential to Toronto's success. And I think we've seen that because when he's been playing bad, Toronto has been downright horrible. Cammy, as of late, has stepped it up. And that's one of the biggest factors into Toronto getting the placings that they did at the major and just their overall performance. I feel like he's starting to hit his stride. And when he's on, he's one of the most deadliest flex players in the league. He's not quite A tier for me, but if Toronto can have success in this next set of qualifiers and the major, I can, without a doubt, easily see him moving up. And like I said, the COD Reddit had 3 players in their B tier, and the only ones that we had that were the same was Cammy. They had Temp and New York's Paul X. I get Temp. I should say this. I get Paris has not had any success at all. But I don't think you can hold so much weight on the team success as the COD Reddit, at least the people that responded, did, because you could be great, but if your team isn't doing well and you have players doing like not only not doing well, but you have players in your team that are performing, as some of the worst in the league, it's going to be hard to get wins under your belt, right? Now you have to take into consideration for sure, but it's not the end all be all. So I actually, if you guys have been able to tell, I have Paul X and Temp even higher than the B tier because I think individually they've both been great. So that moves me on to the A tier where I have 3 players in my A tier, and you already know that Paul X and Temp are in it. And the last player is going to be Florida Skies. So these 3 players, this is where it's interesting. Statistically, if you were to look at the statistics, Paul X and Temp, they're basically like top 4 in almost every category. They might have 1 or 2 where they're not in that top 4 range, but it's not like they're dead last either. They're still in the top half. That's across all game modes. So these guys have been very well-rounded throughout the entire year that they've been playing in every single game mode. And I would say, well, Temp is definitely Paris's best player. NYSL, a lot of people would probably rate Hydra higher than Paul X, and I wouldn't argue that. I do think Paul X is more impactful than Hydra on this NYSL team. I just think he's more versatile as a player Okay, that's my take. Nothing against Hydra. He's a unbelievable player. I mean, he's a beast. Hydra is a beast. I just think that Paul X is super impactful. And you can't blame NYSL struggles, Paris' struggles on these players. Temp's got players dropping 0.6s left and right. Like, he might as well have me in there, okay? It's not going to change a thing. He's trying to do everything that he can. And with Skies, it's kind of the same thing. You know, Florida has had more success than NYSL and Paris, for sure. Yeah, I would say. In the grand scheme of things, they have. And something that I've talked about a lot, I feel like a lot of Florida's issues stem from their weird roles. And Skies has been very good. Obviously, if this was a, against Optic only tier list, he'd be S tier because he goes absolutely bonkers every time they play Optic. And I feel like for the most part, Skies is the most well-rounded player on Florida. It has to be tough when you have the slowest player in the league in Dave Patty and the fastest player in the league in Vivid on your team. And then you have Awakening, who's also a beast, but he tends to really, kind of lock in and focus on his kills. But Caesar, he can run it all. It doesn't matter. We've seen him take over games, take over series. Statistically speaking, he is definitely at the top in almost every category as well. And on the side of the COD Reddit, we both agreed that Skies was in the A tier, but they didn't think that Temp and Paul X should be in the A tier. Instead, they thought Illy deserved a spot in the A tier, and I can't get on board with that. Nothing against Illy, okay, you Optic fans, but come on. But that's the COD Reddit. And then lastly, we have the S tier. For me, this was pretty easy. Me and the COD Reddit, we both agreed. The S tier players, and before y'all say it, because I said in the beginning of this video, saying Cellium is a flex player, I don't care. I don't want to hear nothing about anything. Cellium and Sib both in the S tier. And I had Cellium in the S tier. I think I made this flex video twice now. I had Cellium by himself, but Sib has stepped up, won a major, something that Cellium hasn't done, and I think he's been lights out. We've all known about Sib's potential, okay? Because even from the get-go, he's had series where he's just completely took over 1.2, 1.3s, doing it all. But it was inconsistency. That was everything. And I think going into this major, he's figured it out. I truly don't think that this was like a fluke event. Well, because it wasn't even just the event. In the qualifiers and the event, Sib was great. Sib had the #1 overall KD for all flex players, I believe, in the qualifiers heading into it. And throughout the entire year, statistically, Sib is top 3 in almost every single category. He has a good amount of first in there too, but he does it all. He does it all. He doesn't really have a weakness, in my opinion. If you wanted to give him one weakness, maybe it's his S&D game, but I think his respawn is that dominant. It makes up for it. And I also don't think his S&D is as bad as his stats. I have Sib in the S tier. The COD has Sib in the S tier. And then lastly, Cellium's been here all year long. Okay? Whether or not you love FaZe, you hate FaZe, Cellium is the best player, one of the best players in the game. Best flex player. If you want to call him Man AR, I don't care. Cellium is great. It should be no surprise. He's been one of the most consistent players all year. It's basically been him and Dashy in my eyes. But so we agreed, me and the COD Reddit agreed on the S tier, and we agreed with, a decent amount of the tier list, I would say. But that's it, guys. That is my updated flex tier list, and also the COD Reddit's updated flex tier list. And if you like that, if you want to see me maybe ask the COD Reddit, or I can maybe somehow do it on YouTube with maybe like a community post or something, and I could figure out how people would vote it, let me know in the comments below, because I will try and set something up. But I appreciate you guys as always. Have a good one. It's hot as hell.